Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we are analyzing the results of last night's elections, which were pretty disappointing for a lot of people. Obviously, progressives had a great night. Republicans, not so great of a night. We had two very important elections, and neither of them really went the way conservatives wanted them to go. Progressives, however, pretty happy. They got a very progressive mayor for Chicago, and they got an extremely liberal justice in the state of Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So we are going to analyze this, make sure to subscribe to all that stuff, and I will get right into it. So, first of all, the Chicago mayoral election. This was an upset, period. This was a huge upset. Now, I'm not saying this was unpredictable. This should have been predictable, and to be honest, I should have been able to predict this race quite easily. But I didn't because I went against all the warning signs. Let's go to the here, let's see if we can find it. Chicago, Illinois. Okay, here we go. Um to the election. So 91% of the vote is reporting Brandon Johnson has won this election um against Paul Vallis, who is the former CEO of Chicago Public Schools. Paul Vallis ran a very moderate campaign. He campaigned hard as being a common sense Democrat, sort of a tough on crime Democrat, and Johnson ran on a progressive campaign. Was endorsed, in fact, by Bernie Sanders, had rallies with Bernie Sanders, and in general had a lot of people backing him. Paul Vallis was considered the dino, I guess you could say, because that, of course, would mean, obviously the type of candidate that is more conservative. He once even said that he was more of a Republican than a Democrat. It's kind of crazy he got as close as he did to actually winning this race, considering past comments like that. But anyhow, Laura Lightfoot still out of the picture. Obviously, we understand that she is done. But arguably, according to many conservatives, Johnson could very well be worse. Many conservatives were hoping Vallis would win. Johnson won, and conservatives are not happy. So if we go down and look at the first round, we can see that this should have been a very predictable race. I really truly believe I should have been able to predict this properly. Um, Johnson clearly had the momentum. Let's look down here at the polling. Actually, you know what? Let's look at the graph of all polls. So the green line is Brandon Johnson. Look at how quickly this guy went up. Look at this. He entered the race in November. The race was in February, and the guy made second place coming out of absolutely nowhere. Okay? That's already impressive, but this is just the first round. Let's look at all the people who endorsed him for the second round. Let's look. Yep. Brandon Johnson. Okay, so he got the Jesse Jackson endorsement. That's a huge deal. He got Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren endorsing him. But you know what's even more important? This guy got Troy Garcia, who was a mayoral candidate in the first round of the race, um, to endorse him, which is significant because Garcia got like 14% of the vote in the first round alone. He was the fourth place finisher. So if we look farther down, we can see that Johnson had multiple other people endorsed him, like Toni Preckwinkle. Um, she was the runner-up for mayor in the last election, I believe. Let's go down here. So Garcia endorsed him. Cam Buckner, he was a 2023 mayoral candidate. He endorsed Brandon Johnson. I think I even heard Joe Biden and Obama went out there and essentially said, "Yeah, we're supporting Johnson," even if they didn't officially endorse him. They did, in fact, say that they approved of him. So it's very clear Johnson had all the momentum. Let's look at this list of candidates and let's see who endorsed Vallis versus who endorsed Johnson. So Buckner and Garcia, they both endorsed Johnson. That gives, so Johnson got, let's see, what was it? If I can find it, dear gosh. Okay, here it is. So Lori Lightfoot did not endorse anyone. Her endorsement would have helped Johnson win by an even greater margin, I have no doubt, because there's no way she would ever endorse Paul Vallis. She basically went out there and said Vallis was a rhino during the entire campaign. So she didn't endorse anyone. Garcia threw his 14% to Brandon Johnson's 21%. This gives Johnson approximately 36% when you add the decimals up. Yes. Yes, I think so. I think so. So Willie Wilson is the only major candidate in this entire race to have endorsed Paul Vallis. Lori Lightfoot's voters, if they turned out at all, would turn out for Johnson, even though she didn't officially endorse him. Troy Garcia, his support all goes to Johnson. Willie Wilson's the only one who's major to endorse Paul Vallis. Jamal Green endorses Paul Vallis, but again, only 2% there. Cam Buckner, he got 2%. He endorses Johnson, and so on and so on. So this is quite obvious. There should have been nobody on the face of this earth who thought that Vallis was going to win. Knowing how the city votes, knowing the skin color difference, knowing that literally all of the major candidates that got eliminated were more Johnson-esque. Sure, Vallis finished ahead of Johnson in the first round by like 11 points. But that does not matter when you consider the fact that Lori Lightfoot, Troy Garcia, and Roderick Sawyer supporters all would go to Brandon Johnson. Paul Vallis had his own little coalition. He was like, okay, I got my 33%. I have what's essentially my little my following, but he couldn't expand beyond that. And so that's the issue when you consider Vallis's campaign. He didn't have wider support. He had the moderate support. All the conservatives wanted him, which is why he finished first on the first round. But everybody was already coalescing behind him, whereas all the progressives were split when it came to who they were actually going to support. So again, this race really should not have been extremely surprising. Now, if we look at the polling, here is where I made my fatal mistake. Paul Vallis led in a vast majority of these polls. We look here, Mason-Dixon, they're not especially great pollster. They at the beginning had Johnson ahead of like 1 against Vallis, but with a lot of undecideds. Victory Research had Vallis ahead, and this is early on, by the way, so it's not like this is even before the first round occurred. So it's not like this is totally accurate, but they had Vallis plus like 13.4. 1983 Labs had similar double digits. The Vallis campaign had Vallis up by 9. More double digits. Johnson's campaign had him up by 5. Again, that's an internal poll, so I didn't really regard that one that much. Victory Research showed it closer. And then we start to get to the part where it becomes a bit of a toss-up. IZQ Strategies had this as Johnson plus 2. Victory Research had Vallis plus 2. This one had it tied. But then as the election day came near, and we saw polls like Emerson, which, by the way, Emerson is not perfect. After 2022, it's obvious Emerson is not perfect. But it's definitely one of the better name pollsters out there. They had Vallis ahead by like 6. And then Victory Research had only 5% undecided, with Vallis almost to the 50% threshold. So Like, what does this tell you? I mean, the most accurate pollster, Victory Research, was the most accurate pollster in the first round. They had Vallis and Johnson going to a runoff in that first round. So I looked at that poll and I said, okay, so it's obvious that Vallis does have the slight edge. I gave it to him by 2 points, but I made a huge mistake because I failed to look at how all of the major candidates and all the major endorsements were going to Brandon Johnson. So, yeah, a huge mistake on my part. I should have gone with the way I saw the wind blowing. Johnson had the momentum. Johnson had the endorsements. Vallis only had polling in his favor, and there simply was just not enough support for Vallis to be able to squeak out the win that I thought he was going to be able to do. So that is the results of the Chicago mayoral election. Now we got to get to the real meat. And you know what that meat is? That's right. We're going to look at the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Look at this. Green Bay voted for Janet Protasiewicz. All of these rural counties shifted vastly to the left. What is this, guys? Look at this. Janet Protasiewicz won by 11 points with 99% of the vote reporting. That's insane. That should not have happened. But you know why it happened? I know, I'm going to get criticism for saying this. It's lack of funding, guys. The Republicans didn't care at all about this race whatsoever. They did not give a rip. I'm serious. They didn't. They barely funded Kelly. Kelly got a few ads here and there, okay? He did get some funding towards the end. He had a great debate performance, okay? Meanwhile, ran on being a liberal who will reestablish the right to an abortion, who will redraw the maps, and possibly influence the 2024 election. That was essentially what Protasiewicz ran on. Kelly just didn't have the funding. I'll be completely honest. I should have known it was going to be this big. Do you remember back in 2018? Yeah, it was 2018 when Tammy Baldwin ran against Leah Vukmir, however the heck you say her name. Vukmir lost by 11 points in a swing state because nobody cared about her. Likewise, nobody cared about Daniel Kelly, guys. Nobody cared about this dude. This guy had no reason to win whatsoever. Everybody thought, oh well, it was just plain delusional. It was not grounded in reality whatsoever. We have real Americans saying, oh well, Kelly is not favored, but he could still win. And we had Red Eagle saying, is this it? Is this it? Can it really happen? And it never happens. You know why? Because these rural counties won't turn out for anything. They just won't. They don't care tuppence about a Supreme Court race that has literally no bearing on them whatsoever. Now, you can make the argument that, like, sure, Protasiewicz made some controversial statements about guns. Real American was saying we have to run ads about how Protasiewicz is anti-gun. But that never happened. And you know why? Because people did not give Kelly the funding. Nobody cared about this race whatsoever, guys. Janet Protasiewicz, this would have been a much closer race if people had cared about Kelly. But Kelly just has zero ability of being able to do anything. The best thing that went into this campaign was his debate performance. There were, I think it was, here, let me go to the Wikipedia page. Um, Here, let's see. Seats. Yeah, look at that. Wow. I mean, let's look here. After the primary general election, 2 days after the primary election, Janet Protasiewicz spent at least $135,000 on 2 new ads. A Better Wisconsin later increased their ad budget to $1.3 million, with one ad hitting Kelly for past comment he made comparing Social Security to slavery. So there were liberal groups had spent nearly twice as much as conservative groups in the general election. Protasiewicz had spent over $7 million, booed by an additional $1.7 million from A Better Wisconsin Together. Kelly had not aired any ads himself. In mid-March, Kelly made a $150,000 ad buy, his first of the entire campaign, guys. This was late. He did nothing. Nothing at all. How did anybody expect him to make this race close? I'm telling you guys, if you do not fund a statewide race in the state of Wisconsin, you're not going to be able to get the turnout. You're just not. It's not going to happen. You're going to end up being like the 2018 Senate race where Tammy Baldwin destroyed Leah Vukmir because Vukmir had zero funding and nobody cared tuppence about her. So, I mean, I'm sorry, guys. It's funding. I know nobody wants to hear it. I know everybody is going to say, "Oh, this is Trump's fault. This is Trump's fault," because Daniel Kelly's like associates with Trump or whatever. No. Protasiewicz spent a ton of money, hid behind a lot of ads, and Kelly did nothing himself and did nothing to earn this seat. There was no reason Kelly should have won this race or even made it close, because nobody cared about this race apart from the liberals wanting to regain the Supreme Court, and that's it. That's really all it is, guys. Lots of funding versus zero funding. Nobody knew that there was an election going on, and it just conservatives just gave up. They did not care a bit. So sure, I was close. I was closer than some people. I said Protasiewicz +5, but she won by 11. I should have been able to know that she was going to win by double digits like this. That should have been obvious. But, yep, of course, I screwed up again. So, anyway, another blemish on my record as political YouTuber trying to predict races properly. I know you're shocked. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. And like it down below, subscribe, and do all those things. I'll see you in the next one, and bye.